Excellent. All right. Thanks everybody for joining us for our September 26th regular council meeting. And I'd just like to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we're meeting is the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of this land. And I think it's additionally important to recognize that September 30th is going to be the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. And for those people who are in the Comox Valley, there's actually going to be the Spirit Walk happening this Friday. So I welcome anybody to join in with that, which will be happening, I believe, starting at about 11 o'clock at Sims Park. And with that, we'll get on to our regular business. Just so people are aware, our September 19th council meeting and public hearings were both canceled due to the National Day of Mourning and the federal holiday to mark the death of Queen Elizabeth II. Public hearing bylaws number 3058 and 3066 have been re-advertised and are now scheduled for the October 3rd at 3:15 p.m. And with that, I'll pass it over to Councillor Hilling.
Thank you, Mayor. With an election campaign going on, there's a lot of talk about crime just now, but what we often don't hear about is the other side of that equation. And October the 2nd is Wrongful Conviction Awareness Day. A wrongful conviction has far-reaching and devastating consequences that not only affect the lives of individuals wrongfully convicted, but also affect their families and have a harmful effect on society as a whole. Wrongful Conviction Day is a global movement dedicated to advocating for innocent individuals who've been wrongfully convicted, and is an opportunity to advocate, educate, and create awareness around miscarriages of justice to minimize the effect of wrongful conviction in the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hilling. And Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Thanks, Mayor. So October has been embraced nationally and internationally as Dyslexia Awareness Month. Approximately 10 to 20% of the population live with dyslexia, 80% of whom go undiagnosed. This population, when underserved or unsupported, faces inequities and barriers, resulting in them becoming marginalized, at risk, and more vulnerable to social and emotional issues that affect their well-being and opportunities in life. The City of Courtenay wants to ensure that all people with dyslexia feel valued, respected, and openly welcomed, and to foster a culture of equity and inclusion.
Thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton with that. And moving along, introduction of any late items. And I don't see any. So we have some adoption of minutes, starting with the special council minutes and public hearing minutes and regular council minutes. I'm not sure if we can do them as a total or not, and I'll pass it over to Councillor Hilling.
There is a recommendation, Mr. Mayor, that council adopt the August 29th, 2022 special council minutes, public hearing minutes, and regular council minutes, and I so move.
Excellent. Any questions or comments or errors? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Excellent. Next, we have the Cbrd fiber network license of use. And I have Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council approve the license of use agreement between the City of Courtenay and the Cbrd, granting the Cbrd access to the city's ducts, conduits, and other city works for the purpose of installing and maintaining the Cbrd's fiber optic cables.
All right, it's been moved and seconded, and I'll pass it over to Jeff Garbutt.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. The staff report in front of you gives an overview of the agreement for us to work with the Cbrd and provide reciprocal access. Ms. O'Connell's here if we have any questions on that report.
All right. Councillor Hilling.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just curious, it appears this is a courtesy arrangement, as there's nothing in the staff report that indicates any exchange of fees. I'm just wondering if staff could explain how that arrangement has worked out.
All right, Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you, Councillor Hillian, for the great question. They are only asking for access to a portion of our existing infrastructure. At the same time, the Cbrd is currently dramatically expanding their own infrastructure. And so staff in the discussions with staff from the Cbrd are of the understanding that this sharing of resources or access to this infrastructure will be reciprocated in the future should the city need to have similar access. And we're looking forward to continuing to work with them to share these types of resources. We don't have to put in our own when it's not necessary.
Thanks very much. I suspected as much, as I know staff always looks out for the bottom line. Thanks.
Thanks so much. And I don't see any further questions or comments. So all those in favor, any opposed, and that passes unanimously. All right. And next we go into Courtenay Museum, license to occupy. Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council approve the attached license to occupy and management and operating grant fee for service agreement dated January 1st, 2023 between the city and the city of Courtenay and District Historical Society for the property having the legal description of, and maybe I won't read them all out, but they're listed there. Is that fair?
Fair enough. That's good for now. All right, it's been seconded and back over to Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Ms. O'Connell is the author of this report. I think she has a few words to say in the introduction.
There you go.
Thank you very much. I cannot take credit for this report. It was actually Joy Chan from the Recreation, Culture and Community Services Department with some support from me and her director as well. Essentially, we have a long-standing history with the Courtenay and District Historical Society. I'll just refer to them as the Society from here on out. Since 1999, you'll see the background section. We've really painted a picture of the history of the relationship and how that relationship has changed over time through both the provision of the facility site itself, but as well as engaging in a service agreement with them to undertake or to provide the service of the museum more locally. In 2020, you'll recall that council had directed staff to proceed with the City of Courtenay Cultural Services Report, including key findings and recommendations. And that report established that the society is one of the city's core cultural service partners. So moving forward with that lens and the renegotiation of their long-term lease, as well as their service agreement, you'll find in the report a significant amount of updates to the actual agreement. The updates come from both those that were requested by the museum itself, from the society, as well as those learnings we've had over the course of the term. So this time around, we really took a very deep look at the costs, the real costs and operating costs, as well as looking at that, what is the true contribution of the city in support of this service. So you might notice that this report is written a bit differently than ones you've seen in the past. And there's a lot more clarification as to the value of the contribution coming from the city, as well as within the agreement itself and the service agreement, more of a detailed explanation or detailed distribution of roles and responsibilities around ongoing costs. The society was in discussions with the city on the new terms and agreement and have agreed to everything that has been proposed today. As you will note in the in-kind assistance portion of the report, we do note that the city's financial costs for facility maintenance, repairs, and utilities and insurance is about $78,000 a year. In addition, we're estimating about $19,000 should council grant them a permissive tax exemption. And then the waiving of the annual rental rate, which would have to be advertised due to legislative responsibilities, is estimated about $26,000. So you've got the resolution before you, and we hope that you support this agreement as well as the lease. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I did receive a question in the last while about the area where the parklet is now. People love the parklet as far as I can tell, but there was some thought that the museum might expand into that space at some point, and I'm just wondering if there's anything we can share around that, around future plans in that regard. Thank you.
So I can only speak to discussions with the museum, and that's not something that was raised or that was being contemplated at this time. As to the longevity or the long-term plans for the parklet, I'll leave that to another staff member, to Mr. Garbutt, to respond to.
And I do see that there is strategic planning that will begin this year. So that may have been just a rumor in the public. Thanks.
All right, thanks for that. And Mr. Garbutt.
Through the Mayor to Councillor Morin, it's my understanding that there are expansion plans and concepts have been prepared by the museum, and the parklet won't stand in the way of that. We'd have to go through a planning process to undertake that in in the future.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And Councillor Killian.
Thanks, Mayor. This is primarily a business arrangement, but I'm curious, given the city's support for the museum, whether we have any influence on editorial content at the museum. For example, if the city has objectives towards reconciliation as such, do we have the ability to encourage the museum to be a partner in that regard with, for example, the objectives of our official community plan and such?
Thanks for that. Mr. Garvey.
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Hillian. Thank you for the question. The city isn't involved with programming of the museum itself. They have a board of directors that operates them. We can provide information. We've always had a strong relationship with the museum. They do have a section that talks specifically about Comox as a people in the area, but specifically around a reconciliation. It would surprise me if they're not having some discussions about that, particularly given their arrangements with other museums and involvement in federal and provincial funding arrangements, but I can't report at this point.
Yes, thanks. And I do appreciate that the museum regularly sends us updates on their activities. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian. Seeing no further questions, and maybe I'll throw it out to Councillor Theos. You haven't said a whole lot today. You good?
No,
okay.
I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Excellent. All right. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. All right. Next on the agenda is the structural change to liquor license for Crown Isle. And I don't seem to be, oh, Councillor Moore.
It is a long one. The recommendation is that based on the September 26, 2022 staff report, structural change to liquor license application, Crown Isle Golf Club, 399 Clubhouse Drive, council approve option 1 as follows. The council of the City of Courtenay recommends the LCRB approve the application for Crown Isle Golf Club structural change to a liquor license. 2, council's comments on the prescribed considerations are as follows. A, if the amendment application is approved, it would not result in an increase of noise in the area. B, if the application is approved, it would not negatively impact the community based on the submissions received from the public. C, in order to gather the views of residents, the City of Courtenay posted a notice on the city's website outlining the application. Additionally, the RCMP was contacted for comment and indicated having no concerns. And D, in order to ensure the safety of occupants of the expanded areas, this approval is conditional on the applicant removing all canopies and roof structures that have been constructed without permits, and that occupancy permits are granted prior to any use of the licensed areas.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. And Mr. Garvey.
Thank you through Mayor to Council. The staff report is in front of you. This application was posted on the city's website for comment, as well as notification to neighbors. We have no comments received at the time this report was written. Mr. Marshall is here for any questions should council have any.
Excellent. Thanks for that. Councillor Morin, your light might just be on from before, but did you have any questions? And I'm looking around. I see no questions or comments. All those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. All right. Next, we have Public Works Maintenance within the downtown core. And Councillor Rich.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that based on the September 19th, 2022 staff report entitled Public Works Service Maintenance Activities within the Downtown Core, council approve option 1 and direct staff to maintain modified service level schedule for maintenance in the Downtown Core.
All right. And I'll pass it back over to Mr. Garvey.
Thank you through Mayor and Council. This report's in front of you as a result of delegation. Staff have done some background work and looked at what we do as operations downtown. Mr. Shaw is going to introduce this report.
Thank you. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council, I'm pleased to present the staff report, Public Works Services Maintenance Activities within the Downtown Core. The purpose of this report is to seek Council's direction on the level of service that's provided for the scheduled maintenance activities within the Downtown Core. Now, historically speaking, Courtenay's downtown has enjoyed an elevated level of service, but these services have been restricted to off-business hours to minimize the impacts to the downtown businesses while maximizing the effectiveness and the efficiency of delivery of both routine and emergent works and services. Now, having said that, maintenance activities within the downtown core have remained relatively unchanged over the years, and with new policies encouraging residency within the downtown core, staff have reviewed historical schedules and work activities that have had the potential to cause disruptions. In response to this, staff have crafted a modified activity schedule that focuses on noise reduction while retaining established levels of services and maintaining expectations of the area. Public Works has sought a more balanced approach to noise and service levels. As such, the historical schedule was modified to a new schedule shown in Table 3, which is located on page 70 of the agenda. And as you can see, times and days for activities that had previously received noise complaints were shifted. Sweeping routes were also altered and modified to ensure that the work adjacent to residential nodes would be completed at the end of routes, generally after 7 a.m. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Excellent. Thanks for bringing this back. I know it's been a little while to get here, and really appreciate the report. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks to staff for the work involved. I found the report a little bit confusing, but I think the gist of it is what Mr. Shaw has just stated. I understand that the modified scheduling has been in place for a few months now, and the report indicates no complaints from the public. I wonder if specifically the individual who came as a delegation has had any dialogue with the city and passed judgment on what we've done in relation to the original complaint that was made.
I can say, thank you for the question, Councillor Hillian. I can say that as of to date, Public Works Services staff have not had direct dialogue with the individual, but can certainly reach out to inquire as to whether or not these changes or modifications to schedule have been satisfactory in nature, and continue to work with the community to maintain and modify these service levels and modify the standards in which people expect to receive services within the downtown core.
Yes, that might not be a bad idea. I realize that no news is good news in these situations, but you never know what the circumstances of the individual are, and it might be nice to close the loop in that regard. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian, for those comments, and Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you. Pardon me if I'm not reading through well enough, but the mechanical street sweeping, has that been altered? It's showing 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. Is that correct? Or is that the old schedule?
Yeah, correct. So in the presentation here, it shows that the schedule still remains from a 5 a.m. start. However, the routing within the schedule has been altered to avoid the residential nodes.
Okay.
Result the sweeping after 7 a.m.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I don't see any further questions or comments at this point. Councillor Theos.
Thank you very much. Just through the mayor to Kyle, if I may, please. Are there any other techniques that can be used to create lesser sound rather than the current technique that we're implementing?
Thank you, Councillor Theos. In terms of technique, are you talking about mechanical sweeping in terms of road surface or just maintenance activities in general?
So rather than the mechanical services system that we're currently using, is there a different way? Could we do it in a way that could be more, just people boots on the ground and sweeping certain areas where there is residential, rather than have the mechanical, vehicle there with the sounds that would obviously be made? So could we get just people there in certain areas where we know that it could be ending up being more troublesome to a neighborhood?
And Mr. Garbutt wants to jump in, so I'll pass it over to him.
I guess through the mayor to Councillor Theos, we have pieces of equipment that we've invested in that are efficient and deliver that service in a common method. If we were to deploy people with hand tools, potentially, it's possible that we could do something slightly different there. I would say the method that we utilize is common amongst municipalities in our approach. And I might leave it at that, but Mr. Shaw might have some comments about, I guess, deployment of staff resources.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add to Mr. Garbutt's comments there would just be in terms of resource demand. Obviously, many things are possible in terms of the work and how we accomplish said work, but putting out person power resources to replace mechanical would be a bit of a step back, and obviously be an increase in terms of person power and a lesson in the effective and efficient delivery of that service.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks for that. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I just wanted to add that when this came before us a few months ago, there was I think a sense that we might not be able to solve this problem. But I think what staff have done has been to demonstrate their flexibility and their creativity in coming up with a solution that still meets the needs of all concerned. It gets the job done, but it recognizes that increasingly people are going to be living downtown and they don't want to be woken up early in the morning by mechanical devices, keeping the streets clean or otherwise. So I just want to give kudos to staff for coming up with a solution to this problem. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that recognition, Councillor Hillian. And Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, again, Mayor. I also wanted to, this isn't really for public works, but moving forward in the building department, I did mention this last time, as we add more units to downtown, we might need to look at more sound attenuation in our construction methods. And I don't know what those requirements are for multi-unit buildings, but it might be something we put on our agenda to look at sometime in the future to make sure that, because, there's nothing to say that street sweeping isn't going to continue to happen in the future. And if there are more and more people living down there being woken up in the morning, it could become more of a problem. So looking at the quality of windows and such might be important moving forward.
Thanks for that. Excellent. I don't see any further questions or comments. So we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And next we have the Earl Naswell Christmas dinner request. And Councillor McCollum.
Thanks. I'll move that council waive the fee for the use of the Upper Philberd Center Conference Hall and Kitchen on December 23rd, 24th, and 25th for the Earl Naswell Community Christmas Dinner event, and that council directs staff to refer the annual use of the Philberd Center Conference Hall and Kitchen for the Earl Naswell Community Christmas Dinner event to the budget process.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. And I think it's pretty straightforward. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that passed unanimously. And again, a great event that's been going on for decades. So glad to see that moving forward. Internal reports and correspondence. We have the Park and Rec Advisory Commission minutes from June 2nd. Any questions in regards to the Park and Rec Advisory Commission minutes? Councillor Warren.
Yeah, maybe just for future, depending on which council is back here next time. I'm just noticing that our rep was not able to be at the meeting. I'm the alternate for that committee. So just in terms of notifying alternates, if there's any of our committees, if someone needs to miss, thanks.
Excellent. Thanks for that, Councillor Morin. Absolutely. I know any of the meetings that I go to, it's very much appreciated. And I think probably for any of the councillors there. That being said, for the minutes that are in front of us, there are no errors or omissions. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. And now we get into council reports. There was a small conference that some of us attended, plus other events. So with that, we'll start with Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. I unfortunately did not get to attend that particular conference. I was attending my first board meeting for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, having been recently appointed as part of the BC caucus. It was a interesting meeting, many important things discussed, and an opportunity to get to know the sort of team of some 80 folks who represent the different regions across the country. So while I did miss UBCM, I was very pleased to get started with this new role sitting at the national table for FCM. And I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Cole Hamilton. And next we've got Councillor Frisch.
Thanks, Mayor. So I'll just quickly report back on what really stands out in my mind, and that's a meeting that many of us were at with the Premier, John Horgan, and we were advocating obviously for support around homelessness and housing, and he assures us, of course, that their government is doing everything they can, and I do believe him, and looking forward to hopefully continuing that work with the BC government to find those solutions for an extremely difficult problem. So just wanted to give that report back.
Awesome. Thanks for that. And I think one of the fallouts of the conference, especially given the amount of emphasis on the social disorder due to, homelessness, toxic drugs, addictions, and mental health issues. The Minister for Safety made an announcement just on Wednesday of last week stating that the province is going to step up and really try to make systemic changes to the criminal justice system. So great to hear that. Change is coming and more supports. Councillor Hillian.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll report on 4 items. The first is the final meeting of the Sewage Commission that took place for this term. And I wanted to acknowledge and share with Council what a momentous term it has been for that particular body, both with the resolution of the Curtis Road odor issue, as well as the new conveyance line, which is going to remove the environmental risk along the Willamar Bluffs. And I want to acknowledge both regional district, city staff, and commission members who have worked on all those issues so well during this term. I had the pleasure also of attending the 5th anniversary of the opening of our hospital that took place last Thursday, and had the opportunity as vice chair of the hospital board to acknowledge all of the people who worked to establish the hospital. And that included councillors Anglin and MLA Leonard, who were on council at the time, along with me when and Councillor Theos, when that land arrangement was made to locate the hospital where it is today. Also acknowledged all the fine people who work there providing healthcare to our community. And I also took part in the Project Watershed Shoreline cleanup this past Sunday. I was not able to attend the UBCM conference, but did take part in the over 55 games and came back with a bronze medal. Thanks very much.
Congratulations, Councillor Hillian, on that. Much appreciated. Councillor McCollum.
Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, it's been a busy couple of weeks around the council table, it sounds like. I was also in attendance at UBCM and enjoyed a lot of different workshops related to issues that we're tackling at the local government level, like climate reconciliation, labor and recruitment difficulties in our professional departments. Another interesting seminar that I attended was just about the impacts of decriminalization coming in January and what that means at the local government level. And so I found that really helpful. And then we had some pretty productive meetings with various provincial government counterparts. Councillor Frisch mentioned our meeting with the Premier around homelessness and housing, but we also had a couple of meetings with the Ministry of Transportation that were very productive. One was just trying to get an update and really highlighting the need for advancement on the province's project around widening the bypass and looking at the challenges at 17th Street and the intersections and signalization. And so it was helpful to re-engage on that and find out what the challenges are at the provincial side of that. And then we also took some time to express the importance of the 6th Street Bridge project and the need for granting in order to see that project proceed. So yeah, it was a great week. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Councillor McCollum. And I would say that MODI meeting with the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure, that re-engagement, I think, was critical for a couple of points, really, to let them know that there still works need to be done and that those delays are need to be rectified as quickly as possible. So it was great to get that commitment from them. Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks for other folks reporting on UBCM. I thought those ministerial meetings were really helpful. I attended another one in my role as water chair for the Cbrd, and that was regarding private managed forest lands and impact on the watershed, and just really trying to push for some changes in the Private Managed Forest Lands Act to push for better practices there. Councillor Hillian was able to do a lovely end of term speech at the Sewage Commission, but my water committee meeting was canceled, so I wasn't able to do that. So I'll just highlight a couple things. You know, certainly when I came on as water chair, a lot of the heavy lifting had been done by, you know, Mayor Wells and other folks who had been on the Cbrd board prior and as water committee members. But it was about a year ago that our water treatment plant opened, which ended boil water advisories. It seems like it's sort of like childbirth, you know, once it's done, you don't think about it again. And I don't hear anybody talking about boil water advisories anymore, although that was the life for a long time and it really impacted our local businesses. So I'm those that serve restaurants in particular. So I think that's a real good news story. And then, of course, there were so many benefits along with that water treatment plant in terms of employment, in terms of trail upgrades, the partnerships with Comox First Nation. And then also the water committee really ramped up education around the watershed with the Connected by Water program with some really creative awareness initiatives. And of course, another big highlight was that the Cbrd that we purchased over 225 acres in the Perseverance Creek watershed to help continue to help protecting the watershed. So those were some highlights. And then I know that Councillor Hillian was there a couple of days ago for the Walk of Achievement ceremony, where Jody Wilson-Raybould was, and the mayor was there as well, to celebrate that Walk of Achievement recognition. And that was really a great event as well. I think that's about it for me. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moore, and thanks for all your work as chair of the Water Committee. So really glad to see, well, it's been over a year now, I think, since we've had that new water treatment center online. So really appreciate that. And Councillor Theos.
Yes, thank you. I'm going to talk about the meeting I attended for the Parks and Recreation Committee just about 2 weeks ago now. And one of the, there was a couple things that stood out to me as in terms of highlights. One was the discussion regarding the youth involvement in the Parks and Recreation Committee and trying to decide whether a youth member would be added to the committee, and if a youth member would even want to sit on the committee. So that was part of the discussion, and that was a good discussion. Secondly was a more significant issue, and that was the issue about the Florence Bilberg Center. And we had a lengthy discussion about the repairs that are required at the Filberg Center, including a few safety repairs that are fairly significant. The stairwell outside, there's concern about it being rusty and possibly unsafe for the people that are users of it. And inside in the theater area, A significant ramp without having rails on the side was a concern that was brought up. Additional to that, there was significant issues with the kitchen area that was brought up, and some of those issues, the staff that are volunteers there to put out the food for the public were working in conditions without proper air conditioning for much of the summertime. And a food cooler, being in the restaurant business, I know how critical a food cooler is. It hasn't been operating for up to 6 months. So there is significant, and the stage needs upgrades. You know, when you have 80-year-old people that are volunteers trying to work in productions, and the stage is not the proper size for the production, there are significant issues in that regards too. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done with the Philbrook Center, and that's a critical piece of infrastructure that is extraordinarily important to keep our eyes on.
Excellent. It sounds like there's going to be a financial request coming to our next budget round, I would expect then.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thanks for that. I'll maybe jump into some of the UBCM things, and I'll just maybe follow up with one of the comments that Councillor McCollum talked about with staffing shortages, and the number that jumped out at me at the one workshop is the fact that for decades we've had 2% more people than jobs in Canada and BC in particular. And right now we're at a point where we have 6% more jobs than people. And the effect that that's having on you know, keeping staff and people moving around a little bit more than possibly would have before. But really, when it comes to wanting to get the staff, that's a real challenge right now. We also had a meeting with the RCMP where we discussed some of the challenges with mental health, addictions issues, affordable housing, where we have a lot of people on the streets, and really making sure that we get the supports for that. One of the other things we talked about was actually getting a new regional facility, as our facility's been over capacity for quite some time. Another thing that we worked on was the Island Coastal Economic Trust, and as the chair of our regional committee, we were able to get a unanimous vote from the Union of BC Municipalities to support the Vancouver Island coastal area in recapitalizing our trust and moving it into the future, modernizing it, et cetera. So that was excellent. I attended the Downtown Business Improvement Association Safety and Security meeting on behalf of Councillor Cole Hamilton. And again, some positive comments about the lighting that's happened and the security sweeps that are happening at night. There's the Mayor's Golf Tournament, which again, sold out event. And I saw some staff there, which is always good. And the day after that, I was invited by Chief Carrie Frank to the Comox First Nations potlatch, one of their first potlatches in about a dozen years, I believe. And so a great ceremony, very emotional. And afterwards, there was the pole raising, which was just an amazing event all day. Comox Valley Dodge opened its doors officially in its new location, largest indoor car showroom in Western Canada, which is kind of a cool thing to have. I attended the Project Watershed Keeping It Living dinner fundraiser. I believe there was a bunch of councillors there, almost I think we had quorum at one point. So so that was a great event, fundraising, obviously for Couscous and Project Watershed projects. We had the opening of the latest weekend at Maple Pool. There's the launch of the CV Collective, the opening of Richardson Wealth in Comox, but I was asked to go along because I have scissors and ribbon. And then the Heritage Committee we met, and probably worth noting the park dedication for the Lawrence Burns Park that's going to happen on October 4th at 6 p.m. just so people are aware of that. And Lastly, there was another pole raising at Spirit of the West Coast for Carver Everson, and again, an amazing pole that was raised there. And then on a sad note, I did attend Minister Jim Lister's funeral. He was a longtime resident of the Comox Valley and minister at the St. Peter's Church on Church Street in Comox. Was my neighbor for many years there, and just a all around great guy. So with that, we will move on to bylaws. Councillor Frisch.
So this is the nuisance bylaw amendment to regulate excessive wood smoke. I'll move that staff proceed with a public education campaign to inform the public of these bylaw amendments and promote wood burning best practices. And 2, that bylaw service costs be referred to the 2023 budget process for consideration.
Thank you for seconding that, and we're going to pass it over to Mr. Garbutt. And I think we have a presentation.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We have a presentation. Ms. Janine Tezioli from our engineering services area is going to start the presentation, and then Ms. O'Connell will complete the presentation, and staff are available for questions.
Thanks, Jeff. Through the CAO to Mayor and Council, I'm Janine Tarzioli here to speak about the nuisance bylaw amendments to regulate excessive wood smoke. So as we've heard from before, fine particulate matter, also known as PM 2.5, is an ongoing concern for residents in the Valley. Measurements from the Provincial Air Quality Station indicate that it's the greatest concern, and we experience exceedances multiple times a year. Concentrations are highest during the winter months and winter evenings from about 6 p.m. to 8 a.m. and are low almost all other times except for periods of wildfire smoke. So many, and we experience inversions, of course, which makes it a little bit more challenging just because the emissions become trapped under that layer. So staff had looked into a nuisance wood burning bylaw and found that it would have been a way to address public concerns with excessive wood smoke. It was identified to be effective because wood burning appliances are known to be a significant source of PM 2.5. Also observed that local air quality is better in areas when wood burning appliances are not used as a primary heat source. And municipalities have the authority to regulate nuisances. And the City of Courtenay has a bylaw framework that already addresses nuisances. So from this analysis, it was recommended that we review and revise our existing bylaws to regulate excessive wood smoke that's causing a nuisance. So the council resolution occurred on July 25th, 2022, when a report was presented at the council meeting entitled Air Quality and Wood Smoke Mitigation. And this had recommended a number of resolutions. So council approved the recommendation, among others, to review and revise the following bylaws to regulate excessive wood smoke that's causing a nuisance. So the 3 bylaws that create that bylaw framework include the Prevention of Public Nuisances bylaw, number 2804, Municipal Ticket Information bylaw, number 2435, and the Nuisance Abatement and Cost Recovery bylaw, number 2987. So the proposed amendment establishes nuisance smoke as smoke that visibly drifts onto an adjacent property, interferes with a person's use and enjoyment of privately owned real property or public property, including sidewalks, roadways, and parks. This definition allows complaints to be related to excessive smoke to be evaluated using the existing nuisance framework. And it's intended that a public education campaign would serve to inform the public of these bylaw amendments and promote wood burning best practices, thereby encouraging voluntary compliance. So at this point, I'll pass it over to Kate O'Connell to speak to the levels of service and related to the bylaw.
Thanks, Janine. So through Mayor to Council, as Janine mentioned, there were several proposals for amendments on 3 different bylaws today. As you typically know, when you're creating a new bylaw, you want to be able to make sure that the bylaw is followed. Although we are able to achieve majority compliance in very high ratios through public education campaigns, as well as providing informational materials upon first contact with individuals, there are always those who need a little bit more encouragement to comply with the bylaw. So that's where the enforcement component comes in. So just to review some service levels, because as you know, the smoke that comes from the wood burning fireplaces often happens in the evening outside of our regular bylaw officer hours or the current officer hours. Because people will be approaching home in the evening, there may also be some safety requirements that would require more than a single additional resource. So the first level of service is status quo. So this would be using our additional resources, so the staff that we currently have. Basically, it would be the same process. So you would get a complaint coming into the bylaw office, likely after hours based on burning habits. Bylaw staff would prioritize the response to that based on the bylaw enforcement policy, and then would conduct an investigation. Investigating something after the fact, as you know, can be challenging as far as effectiveness, but would still provide some level of opportunity to raise awareness around the new regulation. Regarding a part-time seasonal, so recognizing that folks are burning primarily in the colder months as a way of heating their home, we explored an option where you see a part-time staff, so a 4-hour shift added in the evenings during the winter months of the year. This would require a 2-person team, so equivalent to the increase of 1.15 full-time equivalent, as well as we would require to lease another vehicle in order to transport those staff. So you can see the costs there at the bottom. The last level of service is actually a level of service that combines both this item as an emerging bylaw, as well as looks to our current needs and our current surge demand in bylaw services and our capacity gaps. And also looks down the road at some bylaws that are in the process of being developed and what council's expectation would be in regard to enforcement on those bylaws. So for example, the addition of 2 full-time bylaw officers in the winter months would be able to cover shifts in the evening to do and be able to respond to those wood smoke complaints. Those same officers could be redeployed in the summer months to respond to smoking in public parks once the smoking regulation bylaw is up and running. Encampments, off-leash dogs, parking, construction, you name it. We do have seen an increase in service requests over the years, definitely an increase in service level expectation that's been coming through. And with the addition of 2 new officers, not only would we be able to provide this service at a very responsive level, but it would also enhance bylaw services in general. So as you can see here, you have annual operating costs, which is the cost of the 2 officers plus their benefits and the cost of the vehicle itself. You have one-time onboarding costs. So those are things like their safety vest, uniforms, computers, cell phones, what they need to be out in the field and operate in the office as well. And then a one-time capital cost, because if you're looking at a more permanent resource allocation, purchasing a vehicle versus leasing it over time is more cost effective. So you may see larger onboarding costs, but those will diminish as it's at the capital costs are amortized over time. So this is the level of service we're recommending be forwarded to budget discussion, recognizing we're on the verge of an election. This is not a decision you're being asked to make right now, more along the lines of which service level do you want us to bring forward? And that service level may or may not change depending on the decisions and the trade-offs the council may be faced with in the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ms. O'Connell. Appreciate that information. Councillor Cole-Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. And I just wanted to say thanks to Ms. Tazioli and Ms. O'Connell for this report. It's been something that Council has wanted to address over this term, and I appreciate you following up on some of the resolutions that have been put forward. Councillor McCollum and I both have put ones forward, which led to this result. I And I appreciate you laying out the options in terms of bylaw enforcement. I know we've increased our numbers of bylaw enforcement hours from 1,900 to 3,400 in recent years, which is a considerable increase, almost doubling them. But one of the things that one is hearing from the community, given that we're all having quite a lot of contact with members of the community right now, and a consistent theme coming through is that while people are pleased that we've increased the level of bylaw enforcement, they do see opportunities for bylaw to be more involved and to address other challenges in the community. So while this will be left for the next budget process, I think you make the option anyway. The options of increasing staffing, I think that they will be good to weigh through if we are back at this table in the budget process. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Cole-Hamilton and Councillor McCollum.
Thanks. Yeah, first off, I also want to just express how pleased I am to see this make it through in one of our last council meetings. The topic of wood smoke and PM 2.5 has come up regularly right from the very first strategic planning session that we had. And we have worked really hard both at the regional level and at this council to try and find some solutions that work for everyone. I think providing a means for our residents to address when there is a really troublesome burning practices in their neighborhood is going to be a big step forward. And yeah, I'm just happy to see it's made it back in time for the end of the term. I guess I also had a bit of commentary about the bylaw requirements. I do think that if we are going to add complexity to our bylaws, that we do need to recognize that there is a cost to that. So while the choice is up to the next council exactly how we should best resource that, I think it may be useful actually just to continue presenting the two different options and let the next group mull it over. When it comes to bylaw, it's one of the services that the city has that's really impacted, I think, by the downloading of services from the province, be it mental health and addiction issues, lack of housing. And then more recently, I learned at UBCM that with the coming in of decriminalized substances, that's also going to be a bylaw function, as those substances are no longer going to be regulated under the criminal code, which means that will no longer be a police matter. So I think that the likelihood of our community requiring more bylaw staffing is pretty high. But yeah, that will be up to the next group of council members to sit around this table. So maybe staff could just comment on whether or not that's workable in the preliminary budget discussions, providing those two different options for bylaw support, or if it is better for us to make a recommendation right now.
All right, thanks for that. And Ms. O'Connell.
Thank you, Councillor McCollum. Yes, it is. So typically what I would do when reporting out on the budget or the preliminary budget for this is include the larger amount of the two we have an additional area for commentary. And part of the discussion in the budget process is about the service level. So what are the risks to service levels, if it's funded or if it's not funded, and what the service level spectrum that's available would be. So typically I ask for the big one, and then I say, but if that's not doable based on the trade-offs or based on direction of council, these are other options.
That sounds like a great way to proceed. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor McCollum and Councillor Moran.
Great, thank you, Mayor. Thanks so much for all the work on this. It's kind of coming full circle from the start of these conversations. I really like that the emphasis. I mean, this has obviously been a very controversial issue in the community, but these bylaws don't tell people that they can't have a wood stove. Want to make that really clear. They focus on education and awareness and help people to make different choices about what they're doing and to actually maybe learn more about burning in the less harmful way. We did have a presentation from Dr. Enns at our last CBRD meeting, which was very helpful looking at this from a health perspective. You know, we're really looking at a harm reduction kind of approach to this. We're not expecting that people will stop burning. People need to have wood stoves as backups in rural areas and even sometimes in the city. So we're not looking at that, but we're really trying to mitigate the harm, the health impacts. And Dr. Enns did state that there is in fact no safe level as far as health goes. So even the cleanest burning stove, the newest, you know, the ones with all the bells and whistles that say that they don't have an impact, there actually still is. But again, we're not taking that approach that you can't have a wood stove. So I think these are really good bylaws to start with. It does give the you know, a little bit of ways to kind of enforce if it gets to that point, but really this is starting with an education and awareness campaign. And then of course at the regional district level, we are looking at other things to complement this. So just want to make that super clear that we're not telling people that they can't have wood stoves. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Morin and Councillor Hillian.
And you've got Councillor Theos as well?
Yep, I saw he's raised his hand.
Yeah.
And Councillor
Thank you.
Theos,
Thank you, gentlemen.
there's a button you can push and then you don't have to keep raising your hand.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, pleased to see this moving ahead, and I think staff have laid out a fairly sensible approach for us to follow. I did want to inquire about some of the aspects of the recommendations of the July 25th staff report, particularly in relation to the monitoring stations that we talked about. It came up at the regional district in the presentation by Dr. Enns and her colleague from the Ministry of Environment that these purple monitoring devices are in fact available and are being used in other communities and are providing a significant amount of data. And I expressed some consternation at that because similar to what Councillor McCollum has just said, this is a health issue. And we know that excessive wood smoke has deleterious effects on people's health. And yet it's left to municipal government to come up with a way not only of monitoring it and establishing what those levels are, but coming up with solutions. So I'm just wondering where we stand in relation to working with the region to establish these additional monitoring stations that it seems to be local government's responsibility to provide.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian and Mr. Garvey.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question, Councillor Hillian. You're raising kind of the core principles of this analysis that was undertaken at the region. Mr. Davidson, who's joining us, has his hand up, and I'll let him answer where we're at from the regional perspective.
Yes, thank you very much, Jeff. Excellent question, Councillor Hillian. Thank you very much through the CAO to Mayor and Council. Yes, it is a very large overarching problem, as we're all aware. We do have the resolution to proceed with air monitoring. The nature of your question is rather complicated and challenging. There's a bit of a relationship, you know, between us and the province and the regional district, of course, that we're trying to manage. That being said, we do have a clear resolution to proceed with the air monitoring network. So staff have already been working sort of indirectly with the province, understanding how best we can implement a network and how we can integrate our network with the province's network. So we've been focused on a few technologies, but we seem to be focusing on the purple air monitors. They seem to be relatively affordable, easy to implement, and they are the ones the province is recommending. So to that end, I think probably within the next year or so, we may be in a position where we can start, or at least propose, a bit of a pilot program for council's consideration. Sorry, a bit of a rambling response. Did I answer your question?
Yes, I appreciate that, Mr. Davidson. I'm just wondering what the budget implications are for the city, or whether the province actually carries the can for this.
Great question. And I don't think we're quite to the point where we can bring forward a proposal for council's consideration. I would say that the monitors themselves are relatively affordable. The province has discussed supporting us in bringing them on and integrating them into their network. We've had some preliminary discussions internally to understand how we might bring them online. So I would say very, very affordable, but please give us a few more months to finalize numbers and details.
Thanks very much.
And I see that Ms. Teziola, you had your hand up as well.
Chris provided a good answer. I was just gonna supporting details on the budget, but we're working on preparing that.
Excellent. Yeah, and my expectations are probably relatively high, because I was under the impression that we were going to be looking at extra monitoring stations like 3 years ago. So I'm sort of sitting here going like, okay, so we might have a budget item, and I guess I don't know if it would be helpful for our council to have a subsequent to or an amendment to our motion to say that, that we do want that budget item ready for 2023 if we can, so that we can really expedite that stuff. Because at this point, if we decided today, if I'm understanding correctly, we'd be lucky to have monitoring in place a year from now. Does that sound correct?
Excellent question. Thank you very much. I think we could probably roll them out a little bit quicker than that if we got some direction. That said, we're still pulling together numbers and understanding roles for various groups. Let me say the option is available to move quicker if council is interested in that.
Mr. Garbutt.
Through the mayor to council, ultimately, this is all deliberations that we have at the budget table in our work program. We'll definitely be bringing this forward. It's been a large priority of this council, part of our strategic work program, and we will bring that forward. I would say, just to Councillor Hillian's question, just sort of around communications, council did provide direction back to the regional district, and I was advised that they've received that information, and then I think they're waiting to understand where the regional policy is developed and understand there was an update as opposed to finalizing that policy in the last meeting of the Cbrd. So we are ready and we're taking action as per council's direction. You'll give us, you'll vote on the motion in front of you, and then we'll proceed, and then we'll continue to work in our regional partnership to identify, because we are in a shared airshed, and there are tools, as we have demonstrated, to proceed. They're available to all local governments, and then there are other strategies around communications that may be more regional in nature.
Excellent. And I guess maybe what I was trying to emphasize is that although I'd like something today, maybe if we just emphasize that, again, having all our ducks in a row for budget time so that we can roll this out as soon as possible, or potentially sooner than that. Councillor Theos, you had your hand up, and just a reminder that you can push the little button that says raise hand, and then that way, because I did see you raise your hand quite a few times there, but it's easier if you just push the little button. But I will pass it over to you.
Yeah, thank you. That button's not existing on my computer at the moment, so it's going to be my hand for a little while. First of all, a couple of points. This is one of those questions where you're talking about hiring a couple new employees at a couple $100,000 a year, roughly, with benefits and everything. And that goes to the question of when we're talking about public safety, what are our priorities? Because when you're talking about hiring new staff members for the city, we haven't hired a police officer for many years in the community. And if we have, it's been one in the last 10 years. I'd have to look at the chart. So when we start talking about hiring 2 new staff members, we have to look at those priorities and take them seriously as in terms of where we can best allocate those funds and justify hiring more staff rather than investing in police. Anyways, that's one point. Secondly, talking about the wood smoke compared to something that's actually very significant to many people and maybe more significant than wood smoke is the forest fires that occur. So for a few week period of time, there is significant smoke almost on a yearly basis where people are feeling the effects of the wood smoke, of the fires smoke that occurs during that period of time. And what are we doing as in terms of informing people that there is heavy smoke in the community from forest fires and giving them advanced warnings? I'm sure we have something in place, if I can recall. Secondly, can that forest fire smoke interfere during that period of time with the monitoring system of wood fires or wood smoke that's occurring, and create a number that might appear as though it's coming from someone's home rather than the burning of forest fire?
I can probably answer a couple of those things right off the bat. So I should probably remind you on the police item, we actually voted as a council to increase the policing. And in fact, you voted against, or we're going to vote against actually raising the funds for them. And then you talked to our director of finance and you eventually voted in favor of raising our budget so that we could bring on those extra police officers. So just as a reminder there that did actually happen in this term.
Since you said something, just to be clear, I didn't vote against it, and I wasn't voting against it. I was asking for clarity whether we're paying more than what we should be paying for the police and compared to how many police officers they're actually able to fund. So I wasn't voting against it. So just have your facts straight. We didn't increase policing in over 10 years, or maybe by 1. And yes, that can be misinformation if you're saying that we didn't do it. That's why I was clarifying it. You have misinformation.
Yeah. Thank you, Councillor Frisch. All right. So the second thing, when we got the report actually from our medical health officer and BC Health and Island Health, who all work together on it, they were able to show that if you have smoke, and actually Ms. Tezioli had it in her slideshow there, that if there's slash burning or something that's going 24 hours a day, then the actual smoke level doesn't decrease during the daytime. And so that's how you can easily tell if something is a forest fire or slash burning, because they both burn 24 hours a day, versus wood smoke from a wood stove, where people are doing the fire sort of, I think I don't have the slide in front of me, but it sort of starts at about 6 p.m., goes until about midnight, starts to go down. And then in the morning, it goes back up again. And so those are ways that you could actually tell that it's one thing or another. And then lastly, in terms of notification, we do have an air quality advisory. So if the air quality is poor, we have a way of getting that information out through social media, the news, radio, newspapers, et cetera, so we can get that information out to our constituents as soon as possible. That being said, I may have missed something, so I'm going to look to Mr. Davidson, Ms. Tazioli, and Mr. Garbutt, just in case there's something else.
Through the CEO to Mayor Council.
Thanks, Mayor Wells. A couple of...
I guess I would thank you for the question, Councillor Thiel. Oh, everybody's answering. I guess I would, if I could start just to Councillor Thiel's question about sort of that differentiation, if I'm correct, Councillor Theos, between sort of background forest fire influenced air quality as opposed to air quality influenced by localized burning. Typically, the air shed is fully engulfed with those kind of activities, and it shows up in the data as concentrations. It doesn't fluctuate in that way, but I would defer to my colleagues who may explain it slightly differently.
Thank you, CAO.
Yes, through to Mayor and Council. In regards to warning the public, that's something that's built into the monitoring done by the province. So that's the Air Quality Health Index. And so that is forecast, that's available. When it comes to the forest fires, I think we had gotten up to about a 5 or 6 during that spell of forest fire smoke in the last few weeks. And you're able to see that data. And that monitoring station does monitor PM 2.5, whether it's from a forest fire or whether it's from a wood smoke, it's all PM 2.5. So one of the things that the province does to differentiate the sources is really look at their signature. So in forest fire season, they track where the forest fires are located and they look at the resulting air quality plumes that they can see through satellites. Whereas during wood burning season, there's usually no forest fire influence because there's almost no forest fires burning at that time, just given that the conditions are so wet. So forest fire season and wood burning season rarely overlap. And for that reason, it's easy to distinguish the sources from the PM 2.5 monitor.
Well, thank you very much. That was an excellent answer from the staff. Thank you very kindly.
All right, and Councillor Frisch.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Well, a couple of questions. I guess the first would be around how we're going to work with CRD. If you could just clarify that with me. Are we sort of just moving ahead on our own and we're going to do our own public education and that sort of thing, or are we kind of coordinating with them a little bit?
Excellent question. Thank you very much, Councillor Frisch. Through the mayor to through the CAO to Mayor Council. We are in a sense moving forwards on our own. We do work quite closely with them. We attend all the airshed meetings, of course. You know, we keep them up to date on what we're planning. But we will be taking these steps on our own. We'll be leveraging any comms programs that they come up with in parallel, but this will largely be on our own. Yes.
Yeah, and just to follow up on that, I know that Comox and Cumberland also had some pretty intense smoke areas in that study, and so anything on their sides that are helping us out or working together on?
Great question. I wouldn't want to speak on their behalf, but I will say we do liaise closely with them, and they are watching closely what we're doing. So we would expect something in the future, but again, I wouldn't want to speak on their behalf.
See how the cheese tastes, right? So sorry for the joke. The other
Mr. Garvey just wanted to jump in real quick.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Frisch. And we have our CEOs group meets regularly, and understand that within our municipalities there are levels of regulation that are somewhat similar to ours. And so I would suggest that we probably could gain some partnership should we get direction. But I also would say we want to have a consistent message. And I think the hard work that's been happening at the regional table and with the working group, you know, these are all consistent messaging. So we want to build on that common approach, and it is also built on approaches that have been used in other jurisdictions. So we'll certainly seek partnerships for sure, because we are in a shared airshed, and that's what makes it very challenging. Is that, you know, we have had wood burning appliances regulated for quite some time. However, we continue to have some challenges, and so yard waste burning, land clearing burning, seasonal issues with our air quality, and the nature of the airshed itself. These are all quite complicated matters, and we're all trying to move forward on what is, you know, a pretty significant public health issue. And you know, I think there's been a lot of good work that's been done, and in this case, because of the level of regulation that we have already, you know, that's why staff are bringing forward these recommendations, consistent with the council direction that we've had previously.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Arbit. And my question's in no way to imply that we aren't doing our best. And I know staff are, I'm just kind of feeling out where everyone else is at the table, because I don't sit at the RD. And I have 2 more questions. So I was wondering if we've kind of identified what the wood burning practices are that we believe are creating the excessive smoke. I mean, a lot of people talk about wet wood or unseasoned wood. Is that like number 1? Is there still burning garbage going on, or old stoves maybe? I don't know, but can you speak to that?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Frisch. I don't want to speculate. I think any individual's situation is going to be unique. It could be a combination of factors. From what we have seen, the people who do burn seem to do it quite well. Our surveys indicate that they're storing wood for an appropriate amount of time. It's dry, it's seasoned. And so the number of people who are, burning badly, we expect to be fairly small. So what's causing it could simply be an atmospheric condition more than anything anybody is doing. So it's something that has to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, and I guess I'm just trying to feel out the implications of bringing in a new bylaw before maybe fully identifying some of the solutions. I'm not suggesting that's where we're going, but just want to make sure that, if we have these bylaws in place, will we in fact have those solutions ready to go as well, so people can do the right thing, they know what it is, and if they need help doing that, whether it's upgrading a stove or getting onto a different source or finding a new source for wood, are we going to have those solutions sort of ready? Is that part of the idea around the public education piece?
Ms. O'Connell?
Yes, so Councillor Frisch, just to respond a bit more to your question as well, from the bylaw enforcement side, the intent is not to punish anyone based on socioeconomic status or those types of things. As I mentioned, we want to work with the individuals in the home to first and foremost educate them on what they can do. We recognize there are limitations, so we would look at every option available to try and assist them into compliance. At the same time, it is also about the nuisance that's being created with the adjacent properties. So it's finding a bit of a balance, but also working with folks in the community who may need a bit more time to possibly raise the funds or implement an alternative, as well as to look at other options for helping them to address the air quality issues that may be coming from their home as a result of them needing to heat it with wood burning.
Excellent. Well, I really appreciate hearing that perspective, because I think that's maybe the other side is, I don't think people are necessarily trying to smoke out their neighbors, but some people buy a house and they have a wood stove and they've maybe never used it before. So thank you for that response.
Thanks, Councillor Frisch. And one of the things that was confirmed to me by one of the gentlemen that represents the Hearth organization, was how sometimes people are encouraged to damper down their stove as well, which of course creates more smoke as it starts to smolder rather than burn, and how that can be a challenge as well. But I think that's where the education component really comes in for sure. Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you. Well, there's been lots of chat since I turned on my light, so some of it's been covered, and I thank staff for that explanation about the forest fire season being different than the wood stove season, because I think that's an important point. I was going to make that earlier. And I think in terms of even measuring, we have been, we do have press that comes out when we have poor air quality, and I think obviously that can be part of the education piece, is being alert to that and maybe changing your practices if you're able to during those times. There are ways to, obviously voluntarily not do use your wood stove or do burning in your yard or whatever during those poor times. And I guess just to the last point that David Frisch was making, I think during the RD discussions on this, equity was a big part of the conversation, and that we don't want to penalize people who don't have the means to replace a stove or buy another quart of good wood or whatever. And also that folks who are renting this would be the homeowner that would be responsible. There'd be a combination of responsibility there. So I just wanted to stress that is, I think, an important consideration, that we want to make sure that we're not adding to the stress for folks who are struggling financially or otherwise. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Councillor Moore, for your comments, and Ms. O'Connell.
Sorry, just for a point of clarification, Councillor Moore, you're right when it gets to a certain point, but at the point of interaction, after we've sought voluntary compliance, in the event that the burning practices continue to cause a nuisance, The tickets themselves would be issued to the tenant or whoever is in the house at the time. In the event of continued non-payment of those tickets, it would then go, we would then seek council's authority to put it on title. So at some point it would revert to the property owner, but we have to serve the ticket to the individual committing the infraction. At the same time, the tenant could then go to the landlord in the event that they have a heating source that is not appropriate. But the tickets would be issued to whoever is the resident of the house at the time that the infraction is taking place. Again, it's not something we'd be doing right away. We would seek compliance, have a couple conversations, provide some information, as well as information around existing programs like rebate programs that they may be able to relay to their landlords around installing heat pumps or better burning wood furnaces and things like that. So education first, but yes, the tickets would be issued to whoever is in the home at the time, if we even got to that point. But like I said, 99.9% of the time, conversations end in compliance.
Excellent. Thanks for that clarification. And I know in the previous term, they'd actually started some of the wood stove education programs at the RD, and those sessions were always fully booked, well attended. So I can look to historically, there's a lot of interest in making, people wanting to make sure they're burning properly. And then of course the other challenge is having a clean source of wood, which one of the real big challenges is the fact that often people think about purchasing their wood when the weather gets cold, and by then it doesn't necessarily have the time to season properly, and so it creates a bit of a challenge there. But we've had a very lengthy conversation around this. I want to thank everybody for your patience, but I think it does underscore how important this is to our council and to our community. And with that, I will call on a vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that's unanimous. Excellent. And Councillor Moore.
I think we're in the next one.
Yep.
I'll move that council give the Prevention of Public Nuisances Amendment Bylaw number 3079, 2022 first, second, and third readings.
Excellent. And are there any questions or comments regarding that? Councillor Theos, you're good?
I'm good. Thank you.
All right. Seeing no questions or comments, all those in favor? Any opposed? That's unanimous. And Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll move that council give the Municipal Ticket Information Amendment Bylaw number 3080 2022 first, second, and third readings.
All right. That's been first and seconded. Any questions or comments regarding this? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And Councillor McCollum.
I'll move that council give the nuisance abatement and cost recovery amendment bylaw number 3081, 2022 first, second, and third readings.
Excellent. It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? And Councillor Theos, you were in favor? So your hand went up.
Opposed.
Opposed. You were opposed. Okay. Councillor Theos is opposed. But the other ones were unanimous in favor, right? Because that's the way your hand went up. Okay. All right. Excellent. All right.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, just to interrupt you, just for clarification, I think there was just a little bit of a delay in the video feed for those participating on Zoom, just for clarification.
Okay. And next we have Solid Waste Amendment Bylaw 3083. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I'll move that council give City of Courtenay Refuse Materials Collection, Removal, and Regulations Amendment Bylaw number 3083, 2022 first, second, and third readings.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Hillian, you want to speak to it?
Yes, I do have a question for staff, Mr. Mayor. I was speaking to a local business owner last week who expressed some concern about cessation of city garbage collection, and just raised for me the question of how well informed our business community is with regards to the upcoming changes. I know they don't take effect for some time yet, but I'm hopeful that we've had a full explanation provided to our downtown businesses in particular. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Hillian and Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you, through the mayor to Councillor Lee, and maybe I'll start and Mr. Shaw may finish. If the question is with respect to the downtown Courtenay business improvement area, we have been in liaison with the BIA, their executive and their members at various at various venues for a significant amount of time. We've raised it, and I know that staff in through our Public Works Solid Waste Group has been providing information. We've provided notification to our customers, made them aware of the change, and we've pointed them in the direction of the existing provider, as well as we're aware that other solid waste providers are entering the market and being very proactive in their communications. Mr. Shaw, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Do you not have anything to add? Sorry.
Sorry, a bit of a delay. No, I have nothing to add. Thank you.
So thanks for that. So if I can just paraphrase, we're convinced that garbage collection in downtown Courtenay will continue unabated, and everybody will be fully aware of what the change involves and what the cost implications are through the Downtown Business Association.
Through the mayor to Councillor Lee, and yes, and we've repeatedly provided that information, and staff through Public Works Solid Waste are available should people have questions. And the BIA executive is exploring some options as well as people are free to pursue their own options.
Thanks very much.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And in terms of it sounded like when the other changes were going on, that the letters were sent to the owners of the buildings and not necessarily to the businesses themselves. And I wondered if there could even just be a mail out that's because I know Canada Post has a mail out where you can just send to all commercial addresses, and then that way it kind of blankets the actual tenants themselves who are going to be impacted directly. I don't know if that's beyond the scope of this type of change or communication. And I don't expect an answer right now. I know I just threw that out there. So with that, I'll just pass it over to Councillor Moore.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up, that I think the letters did go to the owners of the building in some cases, and that might be where this is coming from. But I think if you did a mail out, it would still go to the owners often, because it would go to the, it would go to the owner of the building probably, if it's going to a commercial address and not to a business, right? So I think that might be part of what's happened in some cases, is that the information didn't get to the tenant, the commercial tenant.
Mr. Garbutt.
There are some challenges communicating directly. However, Mr. Shaw might be able to correct me. We have done outreach. Some of the challenges with sort of bulk mail is that actually, weirdly enough, Central Vancouver Island have a lot of people who block bulk mail, and that includes political stuff, just in case anybody cares around this table, to keep it a little light. It just actually, that's not true. The block doesn't keep political stuff out, so just kidding there. But we can communicate and extensively communicate. The best way, if people have questions, we have our solid waste coordinator in place, and they can reach out to the city if they have questions.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that. I don't see any further questions or comments here. Councillor Theos?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Excellent. Seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor? Any opposed? And that's unanimous. Next, we have solid waste fees and charges amendment bylaw. Councillor Frisch.
I'll move that council give the City of Courtenay fees and charges amendment bylaw number 3084/2022 first, second, and third readings.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or comments in regards to it? Seeing none, all those in favor? Any opposed? That passes unanimously again. And next we have some third reading and adoptions. Councillor McCollum.
I'll move that council give the zoning amendment bylaw number 3051, 2022 third reading and adoption is moves separately. Is that?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Is moved and seconded. Are there any questions regarding amendment bylaw 3051, 2022? Seeing none, all those in favor of third reading? Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And
I'll move it again.
for adoption.
Yeah, for adoption, I'll move that council give zoning amendment bylaw number 3051, 2022 be finally adopted.
Okay, and I see that Mr. Garbett.
Just if I may, if we can just pause for a second. Councillor Cole-Hamilton, I think, may have identified a difference between the staff report when we introduce these bylaws and what the bylaws read. So we can just maybe pause for a second.
Ours is the one we're doing for adoption right now, or those ones previous?
The ones for the fees and charges value.
We're on adoption. Could we just clean up the adoption and then we can go back and then that way the adoption of the bylaws. Okay, that's cool. Because it's on the table, it's been moved and seconded, I believe. Any questions or comments on adoption? Seeing that, all those in favor?
Yeah.
Any opposed? That passes unanimously. And with that, which one are we going to go back to?
Just we might need to just if we can recess just for a minute here, just so we can.
Okay, we're going to recess for a moment.
Pretty cool.